It's not often you hear that ESPN got tricked by a fake high school football team to getting on TV and playing one of the top football high schools in the country. That happened over the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2 cents segment of the podcast, where I like to pick one topic a week and focus on, I think, what the big story is. And this is definitely one of the weirder stories I've ever talked about. And I'm not sure how this all happened, which is insane. So if you didn't see, and by the way, I record these on Tuesdays, and this will be released Thursday, but this school called Bishop Sycamore, which used to be called Christian of Faiths, that's attached to a church and a fake junior college that's also a scam. Like, this entire thing is wacky. So I want to kind of break it down for you. And by the way, nothing better than the initials for Bishop Sycamore for BS, which is exactly what they are, BS. So anyway, this fake high school scheduled all these games with top-notch schools in the country. And one of them is IMG. And ESPN picked up the game. Now, there's a marketing company called Paragon Marketing, or whatever they do. And they schedule these games that ESPN uses for like their Geico kickoff or something like that. And somehow Bishop Sycamore snuck in there to play against IMG Academy, which, for those of you that don't know, it's in Bradenton, Florida. It's a private prep school, right? I mean, these kids are paying to go there. Their families are paying for them to go there. It's one of the top athletic high schools / prep schools in the country. There's a couple random things about this, though. The coach of Bishop Sycamore has a warrant out for his arrest right now. Okay. He's the coach. The school doesn't exist. This team played 2 games in 3 days, 2 football games in 3 days. They don't even have a full roster. They got like 30 guys on paper that can play. Usually high schools have, I would think, at least 50 guys on the roster. Here's another thing. A lot of the kids on Bishop Sycamore are junior college dropouts. They're in their early 20s playing high school games. And by the way, they're still getting stomped by the best high school teams in the country. They lost 58-0 to IMG with junior college dropouts. But it's way deeper than that. The coach has apparently been scamming this for a long time. They don't even have a field. They practice at like your local park, okay? It's a total mishmash, if you will, of transparency and lack of records of the school. And it's literally insane. They lied about having D1 prospects at the school. Their website doesn't even work. If you go to Bishop Sycamore, you can't find anything on them. They had a GoFundMe page and they raised all of $140, which is insane. They're not even recognized. So this school is in Ohio, Bishop Sycamore, the quote unquote school, if you will. The Ohio High School Athletic Association doesn't even verify them as a real school. And somehow they're scheduling games with the biggest schools in the country. I don't know if there's money changing hands or what, or people just don't even know that they are not even a real school. So pretty insane stuff, actually. The head coach, like I mentioned, Roy Johnson, he's reportedly had fraud and mismanagement allegations lobbied against him since 2019. Like I mentioned, he's got an active warrant out for his arrest. The 2 games in 3 days, which is crazy. Not the first time it's happened, apparently. Johnson, the coach, even downplayed the number of players on the roster, stating that 15 or so of his players played in both football games in the 3-day span. It's pretty insane. ESPN obviously had no idea what they were doing when they hired, or not when they hired Paragon, but when they just blindly trusted them to get these games on. Apparently, the 2 schools verbally agreed to play each other in May. Don't know how that happened. And PGL, the Paragon company, schedule games that might get picked up for ESPN, and this one got picked up. But apparently, when there was a conference call between everybody, Bishop Sycamore allegedly bailed on the conference call days before the game. Kind of shady there. So all in all, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Maybe you guys have, but have you ever heard of a fake high school getting on TV and playing against a real powerhouse high school football team? The whole thing's wacky. The whole scam is wacky. You can go online and check it out. Just look up Bishop Sycamore. But I haven't seen any BS like this in a while. pun intended, BS. So let me know what you think. Send me a DM or a message, but just thought that was interesting to bring up about how this whole thing is made up and the effort to get these things done. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for the week. Wacky story for you. Bishop Sycamore, man. What the hell is that? Ladies and gentlemen, football is back, NFL and college, and all of your NBA and NHL and playoff baseball needs over the next few months. And the Too Tall Sports podcast is proudly brought to you by Vegas Sports Advantage. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL to get 25% off all of their texting packages. So what that means is they are going to text you right before a slate of games will start. Let's say for football Sunday, the games usually start, the first round starts at 10 a.m. They'll text you at about 9:50, 9:55. You got to be ready on your computer or on your app, wherever you bet your games, whichever sports book or sporting bets website you use your own. This is just a service that's going to text you their top picks based on the algorithm that they have set up. They wait till all the big sharp money comes in, and then they give you their best bet or two right before the games start at different times of the day. So they do text you the picks. You take care of them on your own and bet however much you want. They usually recommend 1 or 2 units of your normal, $50, $100, whatever you like to bet. Use your own judgment on that. However, VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL. That's TOOTALL for 25% off all of the packages that they give you. They'll text you the picks. You get a certain number of picks, and then it'll run out, and you can use my promo code again if you want to. But 25% off. They're awesome. I use them. I make money off them all the time. I use my own sports book that I've chosen to put my bets on. But Vegas Sports Advantage is legit. They use their algorithms. Check them out. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Promo code TOOTALL. What is up? Back again with another great episode for you today. I'm joined by a very special guest. He worked for ESPN for 16 years, and his name is Mark Simon. He was one of the lead stats and info guys, researchers that would get the Baseball Tonight crew all the info they need and stats behind the scenes. So really fun to have Mark Simon on. You can follow him at Mark A. Simon Says. And he also has 2 podcasts, Sports Info Solutions, where they really dive into the analytics of defense and appreciation of, defensive plays and defensive runs saved in baseball and all that stuff. And he has another one highlighting journalists called Journalism Pod. So go ahead and check that one out. Journalism Salute. It's at Journalism Pod. But yeah, happy to have Mark Simon on. We talk about all the ESPN days. We talk about all the characters we used to know on Baseball Tonight and the guys that are still in the game right now, and just some really cool behind the scenes of stats over the years in baseball. So, and his journey to working at ESPN, which is a really fun one. So I think you guys will really enjoy it. My interview with Mark Simon today. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. I'm doing a lot of new video content. Check me out on those 2 platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I'm starting to post more videos, more storytelling, so you can hear my opinion as well as the 2 cent segment that you guys are hearing on this podcast now. So lots of new stuff rolling out with Too Tall Sports Podcast. I'm also going to be having a weekly show on the Colorcast app. I'll give you some more info on that. But basically, it's more of a free form kind of, radio show, but more audio streaming thing. So that's coming up too through Colorcast, which is, I know for you older generation, I'm sorry, it's a lot of tech stuff, but it's another app that we're going to listen through. And I'm going to have a weekly radio show on Tuesday nights, I think 7:30 p.m. Just more content, more stuff. So you guys will have fun with that as well. You can follow me on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel, Too Tall Sports Podcast. Please subscribe there if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification. We drop episodes every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, so you can watch the interviews. On the audio side, if you just want to listen, it's on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't already, go to Too Tall Sports Podcast. Scroll all the way down if you could. Find those 5 stars. Please hit those 5 stars if you could. Leave a review, leave a comment, something like that. It helps the show grow and it helps get exposure so we can become one of those new and noteworthy podcasts on Apple. But at least if you could, takes 2 seconds, you're already there, hit the 5 stars. That would be awesome. We're on Spotify. You can listen there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. We're on Google Play. We're on Amazon. We're on Pandora. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. And with that, the interview is upcoming with Mark Simon. Please enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks. Too Tall Talk. Going crazy. All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Today's guest worked for ESPN from 2002 to 2018. He was one of the main researchers for ESPN Stats Info, and he worked on Baseball Tonight during the glory days with all the big names and anchors that you knew. He works for a different sports analytics company called Sports Info Solutions now, and he is a self-proclaimed Mets historian who grew up in Manhattan and actually wrote a book called The Yankees Index about the historical numbers and the significance of all the people that came through that franchise over the years. So we get to talk to Mark Simon today. How you doing, Mark?
Good. That's a weird combination of things that I've done, but there's an explanation for all of it.
Exactly. And we'll dive into that. I wanted to also mention you're a podcaster as well, and you have multiple shows that you're on. One of them is the Journalism Salute, which we can talk about a little later, and also the Sports Info Solutions podcast, where you get to really dive into the analytics and numbers. And we were just talking pre-show. We can jump right into this. I make videos a lot and kind of little storytelling stuff about why teams are good or why this player is good or whatever. And you brought up some great stats today that I used as part of your article was about how good the Giants are, the San Francisco Giants, at defensive run saves and why they're the best at shifting on defense. So how do you come up with this stuff that you're looking for, and where do you guys really dive into getting those numbers?
So some of that goes to the specifics of what Sports Info Solutions is. It was founded as a baseball analytics company 17, 18 years ago by Bill James and John Dewan, who was the founder of Stats Inc. And their goal was to create a company that dug deeper than what the existing numbers had, specifically in the area of defense. So what we've put together at our company is we chart every play of every game, and we chart every movement of every fielder, just about. And that allows us to pinpoint things that 15 years ago weren't necessarily being done, and that weren't necessarily being tracked. And our sheer number of people that are doing the tracking allows us to look at certain things. Like, for example, if I was watching a game and I saw a Met Giants game and saw Jeff McNeil hit 3 balls right at guys where they literally didn't move to their left or right, I could say, well, wow, I wonder if there's a way to figure out what team is the best at putting their guys in just the right spots. And that's what leads to an article like the one that we wrote about the Giants, and the Giants being great at that, specifically when it comes to defensive shifts, and specifically when it comes to putting guys in the right spots in that situation where you decide to put 3 guys on one side.
Right.
Which is, and admittedly, that's not necessarily for the casual fan. I can explain it to the casual fan, and I can make it in a way that the casual fan will get it. But that's for the hardcore, wow, I really wonder about the inner workings of the game kind of fan. And it allows you, it's a way kind of that we think the game differently.
So let me ask you this, because even when I pitch, like, the shift is great when it works in your favor. As a baseball purist, I'm like, I don't like all the shifting. And as more of an analytics type of guy, or as a baseball fan in general, do you like the shift?
So I look at it as like, if you had started the sport in 100 years ago, your goal would be, all right, not let's put one guy here, one guy here, one guy here, one guy there. It would be, all right, let's put guys where you would hit the ball. So I feel like it's a natural thing in baseball that, like, Willie McCovey got shifted in the 1960s a little bit. There are other guys that I'm sure if people had realized how often they hit the ball to the pull side, they would have been shifted. So on one hand, so yes, I think it's appropriate for the game. I guess whether or not I like it or not doesn't necessarily matter.
Sure.
I'm fine with it. That's it. I'm fine with it. And you do tend to like it when it works. We as a company believe that it does work and that it does do what it sets out to do, which is defend better against ground balls and line drives hit by certain types of players. Now, are there ancillary effects to that, like pitchers potentially walking more guys as a result, changing up how they plan to pitch to a guy? There could be. That stuff has been studied by some. I think more detail on that is needed. Boy, I took a long route.
No, that's okay. Yeah,
I would say I am pro it. I can understand some people's irritation with it.
Sure.
But again, if you watch like the NBA, like you're allowed to double team a player. If you watch football, you're allowed to, align however you kind of want to align to try and protect a certain side of the field or to protect against the run or the pass. So to me, it's just kind of a natural thing within the sport.
Sure. And the easy thing for fans to do is say, well, why can't they just hit the other way? Right.
Yes.
Like, hello?
And it's not, I fully understand that it's not that easy.
Right. Yeah. Usually when there's a shift, you're pitching into the shift. But you would think a major leaguer, if there's no one on the left side of the infield, either, they would say bunt or try to force it there over there. But, it's not that easy, I guess. I want to go kind of back to your upbringing a little bit. So
sure.
when you found out you weren't going to be an athlete at the next level, maybe in your high school days,
I was like 6.
So. You knew that early. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's great. At least you found it out early. A lot of guys hang on and don't realize it, that someone has to hit them over the head with it. You're not going to be an athlete in college.
Let's be upfront. I was the kid that batted 12th in Little League.
Okay.
So,
all right, that's okay though.
I wear it as a badge of honor now.
Exactly. You found your calling. So that's why I wanted to ask you about where, I had never heard of the College of New Jersey, and I was trying to think, do I know any sports teams from there? I really don't. So how, when you were in high school, did you decide I'm going to the College of New Jersey?
So I went to a very good math and science high school, but I was someone that liked liberal arts and that wanted to, within baseball, there were, a lot of different options. Certainly, you could be a general manager, you could be any number of things, having not played the game. I wanted to be a writer or a broadcaster. And so you combine that with, my family is very into bargain hunting. And the College of New Jersey is a state school in New Jersey that is not as expensive as something like a Syracuse. Where, many great broadcasters who train, Syracuse, Missouri, Northwestern, name your journalism schools. College of New Jersey's journalism program consisted of 2 professors, and one of them met us on the day that we went up there. And he was awesome. He was a 50-something-year-old Amish man, big, huge guy, Bob Cole, who had previously had his work appear in Best American Sports Writing. So sports writing was right up his alley.
Okay.
And as he said, there have been a lot of people that have come here recently that wanted to get into sports. I would love to have more of them. So it was like, here I am. This is perfect. And the nice thing about going to that kind of school, Division, and this goes for athletics too, like, I guess you can kind of stand out as opposed to being at a big Division I program where you're going to get trapped a little bit. And it was nice to be able to stand out at a school like that, where I was one of a very few number of people that wanted to be into sports writing. I got to do everything I wanted at the school paper. I got to do everything I wanted to do at the school radio station. And I needed reps because I didn't have a great voice. I needed to find my voice. And I wanted to practice and do as much play-by-play and sports writing as I could. And it worked out.
Cool. Nice.
So
okay.
That's how a city kid went to College of New Jersey.
Gotcha. Okay.
And their sport, by the way, you said you didn't know what sport.
I didn't. Yeah.
Women's lacrosse. They won something like 100. It was over 100 consecutive games in women's lacrosse. I broadcast national championships. They were great. They
really?
Were yes, women's lacrosse and field hockey. So if you liked, and you know what, I will say this too, and this is good if the people are listening to the show for advice. If you can broadcast or write about field hockey, you can do a lot of things because that's a very challenging sport to watch and it's a very challenging sport to understand, and I still don't. But I knew what questions to ask and I knew how to make the players sound interesting, and that was something that allowed me to develop as a writer.
Okay, very cool. Well, hey, why not, man? You gotta learn the ropes as a young kid, and why not learn it with field hockey? So there you go, or lacrosse.
Sure, it's different, but it worked.
Sure. You had a cool story about when you worked, I think it was an internship with the Mets at Shea Stadium, I think, right? And you used to give tours of the stadium. Tell us about that, but also the time that you met Doc Gooden after his last start as a Met.
Yeah, so I've told this story a few times. It's kind of a bittersweet one. That in 1994, I had the best job I ever had. I was a tour guide at 19 years old at Shea Stadium. Nickelodeon built a theme park behind the right field fence, for those that remember Shea Stadium circa 1994. And one of the things that went with the theme park was tours of the ballpark. So they put an ad out in the New York Times calling for carnival people and calling for tour guides. And I was like, there's nobody more qualified to be a tour guide at Shea Stadium than 19-year-old me who can recite every Mets stat and every Mets trivia question that you could possibly imagine, and who loves to talk and who loves to broadcast.
Right.
So ended up there. In the time that we spent rehearsing the tours, it was not uncommon to accidentally run into baseball players. And at the time, that could mean something like Jose Oquendo, who was then with the Cardinals, coming by and doing laps around the ballpark and yelling out as he passed the dugout, "Hey, I can't hear you from center field," that sort of thing. And then one day, a couple of days before the park was supposed to open, Dwight Gooden pitched for the Mets. I went to the game. He got clobbered in the rain against the Pirates. It was horrible. The next day, I am walking and rehearsing my tour, just kind of planning things out, walking towards where the bullpen is. Dwight Gooden walks right past me in the other direction. And I say to Doc, "Hey, Doc, better luck next time out." I don't know if he heard me, but I thought I heard someone kind of chuckling at that, which was kind of sad, because a couple of days later, Dwight Gooden got suspended. And as a matter of fact, his suspension resulted in us not doing, we were going to have this big gala opening night, and the opening night got canceled as a result. Dwight Gooden has since recovered and lapsed and recovered and lapsed, and I follow his story very closely, and I root very hard for him to fully recover and do the best he can at this point in his life.
Sure.
That's my small connection to him.
And he never pitched for the Mets again after that.
And he never pitched for the Mets again. There was no next time. That still bothers me.
Yeah.
27 years later.
Sure.
Yep.
I want to talk about your interesting way into ESPN, how you got there. You have a great story about that. And some of my listeners may remember this wacky game. I think it was 2001, right? Between the Mariners and the Indians. Mariners were up by like 15 runs. The Indians came back and all the way and won. But you had an interesting parallel to that game. So tell us about how that propelled you to go to ESPN.
Yeah, so let's fully explain, since I've already downgraded myself by saying that I was the kid that batted 12th in Little League. I was the short runty kid that was on every team, that was super into things, that would go up to the coach and say weird things, and that just so wanted to play, but was just awful. With that, I was also pretty good at math, and like I knew I could calculate batting averages and stuff when I was like 6-7 years old, and ERAs and whatever else. And I loved to read, and I was kind of an endless reader. If you just put books in front of me, it was like nonstop. Like I would put my head down on a desk, and you'd see me again 2 hours later. I mentioned bargains. My family liked to go to garage sales and street fairs. And one of the great things that you can get at garage sales and street fairs in the 1980s was books by Charles Schulz about Charlie Brown. So I still do, hundreds of Charlie Brown books, like literally hundreds. And I know the strip inside out. I know the whole history. I know his life story. It's pretty crazy. And I said, wait a second, this baseball game where the Mariners and Indians played, where it was 14-2 Mariners and the Indians came back and won 15-14, it is not the greatest comeback of all time. It is surpassed by the time that Charlie Brown blew a 50-0 lead with 2 outs in the 9th inning in relief of Peppermint Patty, while Peppermint Patty went to go sell popcorn. Charlie Brown hit her with the first pitch and knocked her out. And when she woke up, she found out that her team had lost 51-50. So I took that goofy, silly, ridiculous story, whatever you want to call it, and I wrote Jason Stark, who at the time was a writer for ESPN.com, now at The Athletic. He used to compile stupid, weird, goofy, silly stats, still does. And I said, I've got one for you. And I sent him the story of Charlie Brown and Peppermint Patty, comparing it to Indians Mariners. Jason ran it in his column. I got like 6 paragraphs of him explaining it as I had laid it out. So I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And I was working at the time as a part-time sports writer for the Trenton Times. I had previously applied for jobs at ESPN, so I knew like kind of what the inner workings were. And I knew that on Baseball Tonight, which was then a 7-day-a-week show, that they had people working in the research department. And I wanted to be one of those people. So I wrote Jason Stark and I said, look, I want to be one of these people. You don't know me, I don't know you, but maybe you can just give me the name of the person who does the hiring for Baseball Tonight so that I don't have to go through human resources.
Yeah.
And Jason Stark said, sure. And he did. I wrote that person. That person gave me another name. And that person hired me 6 months later. That's how it works.
Crazy, man. And then, yeah, go ahead.
No, that is really what careers can come down to, is one little moment, one random thing at one moment in time where you see something and you just try to go in the door just a little bit. You just need the door to be open just a little bit. Door opens, and then, hey, I was there for almost 16 years, so it worked out pretty well.
That is crazy. Congrats on that, because that's a hell of a career, turned from Trenton Times writer to your ESPN Stats and Info now, like you're. What I wanted to get to next was about working on Baseball Tonight. So obviously you're one of the main researchers. You got to work with all the on-air talent like that. I want to get to a couple names in a second, but just overall experience-wise, I used to love Baseball Tonight. Even like the theme song, I'll still listen to it every once in a while. I love like everything about it. The web gems, exactly. Love it. Yep. I love that. They're going gone, web gems, all that stuff like that is just cool. Like that's what I grew up on, and you got to be really involved with it. So as far as just the experience of being on the show and helping those guys every night, what was it like for you?
It was terrific. I didn't appreciate it as much when I was doing it as I do now. Like 3 years later, 4 years later, I did it from 2004 through like mid 2012. Where I was involved in the show very heavily. 2004 to 2010, 5 days a week, 11 and 12, a little less than that. But it was so much fun. And I think a month in, Randy Johnson pitched the perfect game against the Braves. And I just remember I guess kind of like the combination of the brain power to execute, plus the endorphin rush of trying to work in a deadline situation with live television and all the different twists and turns to things. I remember that being really cool. And it was really challenging just a month in, but it was kind of a really cool moment. And Bond 756 was similar, although I don't think we were on the air at the time. But for ESPN as a whole, Bond 756 was really cool. You're, as a research person, you are the information expert of the show. So you need to be on top of every story in baseball every day. And that's really hard. It requires a lot of reading. It requires a lot of watching. It requires a lot of listening. And this is a lot of pre-Twitter. So you have to really be on top of things. And so that's cool. One of the other neat things about Baseball Tonight is the show is really like a family. And that has different evolutions over time. Like the family of the 2016 Baseball Tonight is a bit different from like the family of the 2006 Baseball Tonight.
Yeah.
But it was a very cool kind of family to be a part of, because you had all these different personalities. You had people who came from all walks of life and appreciated the game in their way. Like everyone brings their way of appreciating baseball to the table, and you kind of smush it all together. And I was somewhat pigeonholed into being the numbers guy, but my appreciation is pretty broad based. And then I will say, lastly, that working with the players was a tremendous experience. And when you're the information expert of the show, your job is to make them look good, and they know that. And as a result, like they're all nice people to begin with, but they're going to be good to you. You're going to have a good relationship with them, almost certainly. And there were a lot of really cool moments with former players, and just things that we got to do behind the scenes. We can go into a few of those if you want.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to just ask you about just the names because, of course, I used to watch. So guys like Carl Ravitch, who's like the OG, right? He's the host forever. Tim Kirkjian's been around forever. He's also the big stat guy, right? John Kruk for a long time was on the show, or even Aaron Boone, Steve Berthium, Phil Thine Horn with Oil and Go, right? Like that. I used to watch like, all the catchphrases, everything. So you used to work with all those guys, but I've heard you in another interview say they all, of course, needed different things during the show. So tell us about, working with those guys.
Okay, let's go one by one here. Carl Ravitch could do the show blindfolded. I challenged him at one point to do that. He still hasn't done it, but I think that it would be an interesting experiment. He is amazing in his ability to process information instantly and essentially commit it to memory as if he had said it to himself 50 times and memorized it. Carl and I also had a thing where if he made a mistake, he could look out of the corner of his eye and kind of in his peripheral vision, he would see me slam the table down as hard as I could to get his attention so that he would know, oh, I might want to go back one step here in the highlight read and make sure that I said this player's name right. I've also been in situations with him where we've gotten to commercial break. He'll ask me for 6 numbers that don't make any sense in terms of why he's asking for them. And then he will string a story together about those 6 numbers right out of the break, like it's nothing. He's amazing at that. Let's see. Aaron Boone. Aaron Boone, I would have, I don't know that I necessarily would have predicted that he would become a manager, but I was very happy for him when he was hired. Nobody in the 16 years or so that I worked at ESPN, I felt like if Aaron Boone, if any athlete had gone from had been wanting to work in the sports stats and information group, I felt like he could have done it. Like he loves all sports. First of all, like he's a ridiculous USC football fan. He loves the Sixers. The cool thing about Aaron is he's so into everything. And he commits everything to memory so well. We would ask him, we'd be like, okay, you hit home run number 72 on this date. And he would be like, okay, that sounds like it would have been about the time that we had a 6-game road trip, that Dodger Padre or road trip that we would have taken at that time of year. So I probably hit the home run off of whoever, Ishmael Valdez. And he would be right. Like probably 70% of the time. And it was scary how good he was at something like that. John Kruk, something that I think surprised people about John Kruk is one, he's very sharp. Like he knows hitting inside and out. He can catch things that hitters are doing from 1,000 feet away. John Kruk was probably the most punctual of the Baseball Tonight analysts. Always on time for meetings, always ready to go, always. He might be a little grumpy, but he was never late. He was always like the first one there. And I think people would be surprised by that. And he would always say, where else am I going to go? Because he's trapped in a hotel room in Bristol, Connecticut.
Sure.
He'd much rather be with us. Steve Berthium, if I can simulate it, let's say. Steve Berthium would have a stack of papers. This doesn't do it
justice. By the way, Steve Berthium is the play-by-play for the Diamondbacks now.
Yes, he's not necessarily as well known as everybody else, but he would have a stack of papers, like 30, 40 pieces of paper, and he would go, don't mess with this. This is the show. And he would have everything in order, exactly how it needed to be, every highlight, every stat, every tidbit. And the way he did the show was very formulaic in that, he knew when he had to do ask an analyst for something, but he also knew exactly what he was going to say at every given point. Sure. Him and Carl are complete opposites, and you learn how to write. With Carl, you could just put a couple of words on a page,
and he would take it from there.
You're writing full sentences, and you're trying to replicate his voice because, again, the way Baseball Tonight works. Let's say a guy hits his 4th home run of the game or 3rd home run of the game at 10:15 p.m. Eastern time. We're on the air and Steve Berthium's doing things and now Steve Berthium's going to see a highlight of this and then a graphic is going to come up that's going to say something like most 3-homer games by a Angels player, and it'll list like 4 guys. Below that, ideally in a sheet that only he has, is a script. that's like it has 40 words of copy, maybe 25, 30 words of copy, and he's reading it timed out to 15 seconds. He's not able to write that. He would like to be able to write that, but he can't. You have to write it for him.
Okay.
So you're putting it together, and it's okay. Who would have hit?
And Tim Kirchin, of course.
Yes. Okay. And so Tim Kirchin and I bonded very quickly. In fact, my first meeting with Tim Kirchin I was really scared to meet him, which is funny because he's like the most approachable person in the world.
And he's like, what, 5'5"?
He's 5'5". He doesn't look it probably, but he's a very good athlete who still plays basketball.
Oh, wow.
And is very good according to people that I've talked to.
Okay.
I bonded with him because my first encounter with him was to approach him and say, Tim, when I was at the newspaper that I used to be at, I wrote a story about people's first baseball gloves. I know that you really like things about baseball gloves. Here it is. I hope you'll read it. And he came back the next day and he sought me out and thanked me for showing it to him. So we bonded nicely off of that. He's in the same kind of boat as I am. Like, he's an everything baseball person. Him and Jason Stark are extraordinarily approachable. They will talk to anybody at any time, which is fun. And super nice people. Like, it would be hard to get nicer than Tim Kirchin and Jason Stark.
I always laugh because when Tim Kirchin, he'd start pulling out like, in the live ball era.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like,
right?
And he's talking about stats that are way before our time.
Yes.
Was it difficult to pull stuff that he would talk about versus the other people that are a little younger?
Well, he and I have similar statistical sensibilities in terms of the history stuff. And at the time, in the pre-Moneyball era, Baseball Tonight was more about history and did you know than it was about like the X and O aspect of the game. So we used to deal with someone from the Elias Sports Bureau who would be sitting like right next to us. And if we needed to know, like, when was the last time a guy had 6 hits and 3 homers in a game back then? Now you can look it up. But back then it was, all right, we turn to this guy and he gives us all the details on it. And we were generally in the same vein on that.
Gotcha. Okay. I wanted to ask you about 2 random shows that used to be on back in the day that I used to love also that are similar style. And then we'll go into you were on a similar style of competition to this. Stump the Schwab was one of my favorite shows back in the day, right? Loved it. Howie Schwab, that's cool. And I figured
Howie's
you would appreciate that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And also a lesser known one, but the 2-minute drill. Kenny Mayne was the host, but that was a fun show also. What do you remember about that era of those 2 like competition style sports knowledge shows?
So I will be honest and tell you that I didn't work with either of those.
Right.
I know what they were.
Yeah.
They're like, I can tell you that like Howie's legit. Like there was no helping him there. That was him just knowing stuff off the top of his head. He's encyclopedic. He was Dick Vitale's basically, assistant for a very long time. I think what's funny is about that show is that they tried to portray the Schwab as like this mean guy, and he doesn't have a mean bone. Like he's in the Tim Kirchin vein of super nice, and he was great. Trying to remember 2-minute drill. I know I would have seen it. I don't know that I had any experience.
That was like the 3, contestants are up, and then if you win parts of a panel would ask them questions.
Yep.
And then they had one team they would ask a question for in like the final round if they got it, like a Final Jeopardy type of thing.
Yeah, trying. I know that with Stump the Schwab, we had people that like won or competed on Stump the Schwab applied to work in our department.
Okay.
I don't know that we ever had anyone from 2-minute drill. Okay. I thought you were going to ask me about maybe Dream Job. Which
I
remember watching too. I didn't. I Dream Job's fascinating to me because for people that don't remember, that was a reality show with a reality show competition with the idea of become a sportscaster. And Mike, what was it, Hall?
Yeah, I think he won, but never actually did anything really.
He went to like ESPN U. He didn't. He did like a little bit of ESPN.
He didn't pop.
He didn't. Yeah, he didn't necessarily resonate, but there are other people that competed in that show that went on to certainly bigger and better things. Casey Stern being one of them. Now with TBS TNT. I I remember thinking that, like, boy, if I didn't work at ESPN, this would be like super cool to be on.
Yeah.
I would say it was fun more than anything else. And there were a few. I think there were a couple of other examples of people who got their break from being on that show. And that's cool that ESPN was able to create something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I back in the day, I would have done it too if I was this age now. You got to compete. The reason I brought up the 2-minute drill is you got to compete in a similar competition with the Society of Baseball Research. And it was kind of like a Jeopardy style where you were rattling off stats and all that stuff. You came in second, unfortunately, but I'm sure you did really well. So tell us about that experience.
I'll sign up for second place in that every single time.
Yeah.
So again, to provide full story, Society for Baseball Research is an organization that is very into history, but is kind of painted as an organization that is only into stats. It's not. It's like there are a lot of people that want nothing to do with stats that are in Saber. It's called sabermetrics. That was a term that was coined. That term might have been coined differently if it was coined now. But the Society for Baseball Research is basically a baseball fan group of what I would describe as fairly learned baseball people, whether it's in minor leagues or umpires or visiting players' grave sites or box scores of old games.
Sure.
Every possible interest that you could think of with baseball is covered in the Society for Baseball Research. Wow. They have a national convention every year. It's fantastic. It's a great opportunity to be around like-minded people, and you will always be able to find someone that fits in your interest group. They have a trivia competition. The trivia competition is really, really, really hard. They do a written quiz, and then they do a Jeopardy-style championship. And I survived I made it to the semifinals because there was the year, not this year, but 5 years ago, there were 7 guys that threw no hitters, right? And like Hisashi Wakuma, I think, was one of them. And it was on the quiz, name all 7 guys.
Oh, wow.
And nobody can name all 7 guys.
No, because usually it's a nobody.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you work at ESPN and you're in ESPN Stats and Information and you're dealing with
you're
those 7 guys,
yes,
exactly. So I got those 7. I got 7 points for that, whereas a lot of people were probably getting 1 or 2 points for it.
Right.
So
you got them all then.
Yeah, that allowed me, and I don't remember them now, but that allowed me to get to the knowing those names allowed me to reach the semifinal round. The semifinal round was kind of a joke. There's this one guy from Flushing, Queens, a New York guy, big Met fan, who was like a machine. And it was 4 people, cut it down to 2. And at the end of the round, came down to the last question. And one of my opponents got it wrong. So I advanced to the championship to face this guy. And I don't know if any of your viewers are watching the current version of Jeopardy. There's a guy on now who's won 18 in a row. He's ridiculous. He's unbeatable. And the only way you're going to beat him is you're going to have to essentially play his game and A, keep up with him, but B, if you hit a daily double, you got to bet it all. Right. And you hope that you have a lot of money when you have a daily double. So you hope that you have $7,000, $8,000. So I'm in this competition. Boy, I hope people are interested in this. I'm trailing 21-9. And to get to 9, I answered the equivalent of a $100 question, 1-point question on Florida colleges. And it was Buster Posey. It was some question about Buster, where the answer was Buster Posey. Great. I know that. Easy. No problem. All right. So let's take Florida colleges for 303 or 4 or 5 or whatever it was. Daily double. I'm like, all right, I'm here. The only shot I have against this guy is to bet the farm. Let's bet the whole thing. And they asked the question, and it was who set the AL rookie home run record before Mark McGwire? Shrug emoji, basically.
Yeah.
And it's Al Rosen, who was a former general manager of the Indians, I think it was the Indians and the Giants, who played in the 50s, who was a very good third baseman in the 1950s, who was someone that if you were 70, 75 years old, you'd know it off the top of your head. Me being, 40 at the time, I didn't know it. So I got it wrong, but I was kind of the people's champion because I think people enjoyed rooting for the underdog.
Sure.
And I got a very nice ovation. And in the airport the next day, someone stopped me and said that they were glad that I bet it all, even though I
Okay, there you go. So you went for it, right? Why not?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to sum up here.
Yeah.
I am a trivia savant who couldn't play Little League, who likes Charlie Brown, who worked at ESPN, who is very into everything baseball.
And that's exactly where I'm going next. You definitely know how to do a segue on a show, don't you?
There you go.
You have a really cool YouTube video where you name 60 years or 70 years of final outs of World Series games each year. And so I want to give you the floor. You're best known for your 70s and 80s World Series knowledge, or those are your, bread and butter there. So if you would be kind to rattle off the 70s and 80s last outs of the World Series.
So before I do that, just to explain, this came about. This is what happens when you go to a Society for Baseball Research convention. There was one that I went to as a kid where someone did a presentation about the final out of the World Series. Now, I had struck out in Little League to end a game twice, and I can tell you that it really, really sucked because as a little kid who wants to deal with the shame of striking out to end the game. And so that experience always stuck with me, and I always felt bad for the person that was the final out of the season. So that led to me, for some reason, trying to memorize a list. And I performed it for a group of like 5 people at the Society for Baseball Research National Convention. And everybody's laughing about it. And they're all like, they were all very, they appreciate it because every one of those people has their own little thing that they know. This just happens to be mine. So I went back to work and I said to one of my colleagues, I said, can you film me in the break room, just doing something really stupid? And we did it. And originally I just put it on Facebook and I was like, let's just put it on Facebook and my friends will enjoy it. And someone took it off my Facebook, put it on their Twitter, a media person, I won't say who, put it on their Twitter. And all of a sudden, the next thing I know, it's on Deadspin, it's on MLB.com. I have to call my boss at ESPN to explain to him why I'm on Deadspin. Fortunately, for good reasons.
Yeah.
All right. So I had I memorized the last stats of the World Series back to, I think it was the early 50s. So 1970 is Pat Corrales of the Reds against the Orioles. 1971 is Merv Rettenmund against the Pirates. If you watch the final out of the 1971 World Series, the pitcher jumps into the arms of the first baseman and just kind of like, they go in like circles. He's really excited. It's kind of cool. 1972, the Reds and the A's played what I think was a 1-run game, and Pete Rose flied out for the final out to deep left field, where it was caught by the A's left fielder Joe Rudy. That was the first of 3 straight years that the A's won the World Series. 73, they beat the Mets in 7 games. Wayne Garrett hit a pop-up to first base. I think he was the tying run in the 9th inning. And he popped up. And that goes back to the, boy, it really sucks to be the last out,
right,
kind of thing. 1974, there was a pinch hitter. I think it was for the Dodgers, Von Joshua. The only reason that that's memorable is if you watch the video, it's a ground ball back to the pitcher, and Raleigh Fingers, he's like so excited. He does a little dance as he flips the ball at first base. 75, people remember the Red Sox-Reds World Series because of the Carlton Fisk home run in Game 6. People forget that Game 7, the Red Sox had a 3-0 lead on the Reds to try and win the World Series at home, to beat the Big Red Machine in Game 7, blew the lead, lost the game on a hit by Joe Morgan in the 9th inning. Carl Yastrzemski flied out to end the World Series. 1976, Roy White hits the fly ball to left field in Yankee Stadium. I think it's George Foster who makes the catch. That's one of the funnier last out videos because all of the Reds go sprinting off the field as fast as they can because they're afraid they're going to be attacked by the mob that descended on the field when Chris Chambliss hit the home run in the ALCS. 1977, Lee Lacy, Dodgers, pops out to the pitcher Mike Torres. Mike Torres winds up on the Red Sox the next year. He gives up the home run to Bucky Bleeping Dent. The Yankees wind up going back to the World Series. They win the World Series, and Ron Cey pops out for the final out. 1971, Orioles and Pirates again, same thing as 71. And the
79,
Pirates
yeah.
79. Kenta Culvey pitching, the submariner, for the Pirates. Pat Kelly of the Orioles hits a fly ball to center field. The Pirates were down 3-1. They won game 5 at home. They won game 6 on the road, and they won game 7 on the road, winning a World Series, game 7 on the road. It was a very long time before that happened again. Speaking of a long time, 1980, Phillies win the World Series. It was their first one in forever. They beat Kansas City. Tug McGraw strikes out Willie Wilson on a high fastball. 1981, I actually have a story with this one. Steve Howe of the Dodgers pitching. The Dodgers were down 2-0. They won 4 consecutive games. They beat the Yankees in game 6 in Yankee Stadium. Bob Watson hits a fly ball to Ken Landreau in center field. Ken Landreau catches it, starts to throw it into the crowd and says, no, wait a second. He still has the ball.
Smart man.
40 years later, yes. Ending that game. 82, to speed it up a little bit, Bruce Sutter strikes out Gorman Thomas. 1983, Cal Ripken Jr. catches the final out. Gary Maddox hits a line drive. Orioles win the World Series. 1984, a lot of great players were last outs. Babe Ruth was a last out. I mentioned Pete Rose was a last out. Tony Gwynn was a last out. Flew out to left field against the Tigers in Tiger Stadium. Mob descended on the field. Tigers, that was a great Tigers team that won the World Series. 85, Royals and Cardinals. Cardinals should have won the World Series in game 6. People are not happy about the umpires calling game 6. Don Denkinger. Royals come back and win. Game 7, Brett Saberhagen, shutout. 11-0, final score. Fly ball, right field, Andy Van Slyke. Mets win the World Series the next year. Marty Barrett strikes out Jesse Orozco. Jesse Orozco pitching. Throws the glove to the sky. Famous video.
Yes.
1987. Willie McGee grounds out to third. Twins win in 7 games. The home team won the game, won each game of that World Series. The Twins were by far from the best team in baseball that year. They won 85 games, but they won the World Series. They had 4 games at home, and they won all 4.
Yeah.
88 is the Kirk Gibson home run year.
Yeah.
Oral Hershiser strikes out Tony Phillips and that World Series. And then 1989 is the very rare 4-1 putout, which is Brett Butler hitting a ground ball. First baseman dives for the ball, misses the ball. Second baseman gets to the ball. Dennis Eckersley covering at first base, throw to first in time. 4-1 in your scorecard. The A's win the World Series, the only one in that 88-90 run where they made it all 3 years, but got beat by the Dodgers and got beat by the Reds. And that's it. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark freaking Simon, man. That is awesome.
Let's be honest, that's a little ridiculous.
It is, but it's still cool, though. I love it. And by the way, he only did 70s and 80s there, okay? He has much more range than that, but that's really cool. So I'll give you your good decades there, but thank you for doing that. You did bring up Jesse Orozco throwing his glove in the air. Let's talk about some wacky stats just because you love stats, and so do I. Baseball's got a lot of weird stats. So what do you remember about the coincidence of Jesse Orozco being number 47?
Yeah, so all right. So if we're going to talk about weird and unusual, the kinds of things that different people have different brain associations for things. And for me, this is a good example of how my mind works. Jesse Orozco wore number 47 for the Mets. He got the last out of the 86 World Series, which is the team in my lifetime. There was never a team that's going to surpass the 86 Mets. Jesse Orozco, as a Met, won 47 games and lost 47 games. I just think it means nothing. It is a useless stat, but I just think it is really kind of cool. And this is the one sport where something like that is valued. We appreciate something like that. You don't appreciate something like that if it's an NBA player or an NFL player.
Right.
But Jesse Orozco being 47 and 47 for the Mets and wearing number 47, that's just, some stats have to be, everyone wants their stats to be interesting. That one's just cool. I think that one's just kind of a neat kind of thing.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of that are more, but one that comes to mind that's just kind of wacky is Fernando Tatis Sr. hitting 2 grand slams in 1 inning. That stuff just doesn't come around ever. You know what I mean? Or weird ones that come around later, like the Royals, 85, they won the World Series. And exactly 30 years later, 2015, they win the World Series. Stuff like that is kind of cool to appreciate about baseball.
Yeah, and that goes back to what Tim Kirkland says, that like every day you're going to see something that you haven't seen before. We're taping on a day where the Yankees are playing the Braves, and there was a stat that was circulated on Twitter today that I'm guessing came from Elias or Stats Inc. or one of those groups, that it was the first meeting of teams that had won at least 9 consecutive games in 120 years. And that's, again, not every stat has to be used towards winning or losing a game. That's just cool. I think that's kind of neat when you watch it. Like, wow, we've never had 2 teams that were in this position in 120 years. It's a lot of generations.
For sure.
That's pretty cool.
One more weird one that I saw just because it happened the other day was the kid Tyler Gilbert threw that no-hitter the other day. But He was the first one since 1953 to throw a no-hitter in his first MLB start. That's crazy stuff, that how hard it is to do that.
Yeah, I like that. That's the punchline with that is the guy that did it before him. That was his only season. Like, he had his moment of glory, and that was the end in terms of him, for him and pitching in the major leagues. And again, it goes back to that on any given day, you can see anything, which is one of the really neat things about the sport. Again, with football, the stars are always going to have the ball. The quarterback's always got the ball.
Right.
In the NBA, the stars always got the ball. You'll see the occasional last second shot by a lesser known player, certainly. But in baseball, 9 guys have to bat. Everyone gets the same number of turns. And in baseball, nowadays, every team needs 30 pitchers to get through a season. You never know what you're going to see from one of those pitchers on a given day. If he's got it and everything lines up right and that door opens just a little bit like the door opened for me with my job, it's the same thing for Tyler Gilbert. The door opened for him. He did not have overpowering stuff that day. He had 5 strikeouts and 3 walks.
Yeah, and the advanced stats and stuff you love, he had like 10 hard hit balls that were over 100 miles an hour. Like, they were not missing.
And they were all hit right at people.
Yeah.
Or he got a good defensive play. The door opened for him, and he was able to walk through it.
Right.
Bobo Holloman, the guy who threw that, his major league pitching career lasted like 90 days.
The one from 1953?
Yeah, the one from 1953. Yeah. Crazy.
It is crazy. I want to, before we get to your Yankees book, which I want to get to, but let's talk about your 2 podcasts real quick. So one of them is called Sports Info Solutions, and the other one's the Journalism Salute. Tell us about those, real quick, especially on Sports and Info one, is you like to highlight, I think you said off the top, defensive appreciation, which kind of gets tucked underneath the rug. Offense gets all the numbers and pitchers and all that stuff, but defense doesn't get as much run. So tell us about what you're trying to showcase on that podcast.
There are a million baseball podcasts out there, and if you want to listen to one, ideally there is something for you. And we've filled a niche of being a defense appreciation podcast. I bring on current players. I bring on former players. I bring on media people. When we have current players on, which we've done a good amount this year, we talk about how they do what they do. Like, how do you make a really good defensive play? Now, admittedly, it helps to be able to see it, but I think we paint a pretty good picture. We provide all the links to the plays that you might need to check out when we explain, like when I'm talking to Matt Chapman about how he handles balls, line drives that are hit right at him. Plus, he has the added challenge of being in Oakland, where that foul territory is crazy. And how do you manage that foul territory? And he talked to us for a good couple of minutes about specifically plays that he made. One where he tripped over a mound. One where he went up against the stands. All these different ways that he talked about making plays. So we do a lot of defensive appreciation. And again, there are a lot of baseball podcasts out there. We're trying to find a void that you might not be familiar with, and one that maybe we can educate you on. And that's kind of the goal of the show.
Sure. And I think Oakland's still the only stadium that has an on the field bullpens.
Because the Giants moved it, and I think the Cubs moved it. Yeah. It's a major challenge for Matt Chapman. And Matt was good just because he was very honest about things, and honest about how his hip injury had impacted how he had played in the last year and a half. And it was good. It was refreshing. I think the players, once they realize after a question or two that we're not out to get them, I think they seem to like it.
Right. And, it's very rare that people ask them about their craft, in media.
Yes.
It's more about the drama and all that stuff. You're actually asking like, hey, why are you good on defense? What makes you good back there? So
craft over drama. It's funny. I said that I love the 86 Mets before. The 86 Mets were drama over craft.
All drama.
Yeah.
I don't know how they put it together, but they did.
And I don't care about that part at all. Yeah. I like the craft. I want to know about how Darryl Strawberry hit the ball and how Keith Hernandez made the play.
Right.
Craft over drama is a good way to put it.
Yeah. And then your other one's called Journalism Salute. Yes. Totally different podcast. So tell us about that one.
So this is funny because this is like a 98% baseball conversation, but I'm going to just dip my toe in here, 2% journalism. Sure. During the pandemic, I got really bored. I was still working. I still had my job, but baseball wasn't being played, which reduced the number of things that I could have been doing at the time. And I got really bored. And I was like, what skills do I have that I can apply to something else? And this is a good kind of lesson for people. And I was like, well, I want to show that I can do something where I want it with some seriousness. And I don't want it to be political because political is just arguments. And I don't want to deal in argument. I want to spotlight something that is good. And meanwhile, you do have a lot of political attacking the media at this point. But I worked in the media and I've worked in media adjacent and I know a lot of media people and I know that there's a lot of good there. And I wanted to just present an opportunity to showcase the good in combination with giving myself something to do. And I knew that out of all the things that we talked about, the thing that I think I'm really, really good at that can be applied to other fields is asking good questions. And I wanted to show that I could ask good questions in another field. So I've got about 50 episodes that are interviews with journalists. They're mostly about 30 minutes each. They talk about their craft. They talk about craft over drama, and they talk about who they are and what they do and what they're trying to do, and give a little bit behind the scenes on the stories that they write. And it's certainly I knew less than zero about environmental journalism before I talked to a group of reporters in that, and it was a good opportunity to, I guess, broaden my knowledge a little bit. So that's cool. That's what it is. Journalism Salute. That's what it's called. Journalism Pod on Twitter for anyone that's interested.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay. Finally, we can get to the Yankee book that you wrote. So it's called Yankees Index. And it tells a story about the winningest pro sports franchise in history, which is the Yankees. Had to be exciting writing it. I know you're a Mets fan or you grew up a Mets fan, but at least aside from that, what kind of stuck out to you when you were writing that book, whether it's Derek Jeter, Mickey Mantle, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth? What stuck out to you, or a few things when you wrote that book?
Sure. So the purpose of the book was essentially to give people, I think, bathroom reading. You could read a 4-page essay on Babe Ruth while you're in the restroom.
Sure.
There are 60 or 70 chapters in the book that are about that length. Some might be a little longer, but it's a very easy read. There's a lot of graphics and charts and pictures and fun stuff. What did I get from it? There were a few in the vein of Bobo Holloman and the pitcher who threw the no-hitter in his first start. There were a similar vein with the Yankees. We could talk about, I found really cool quotes on how Babe Ruth hit home runs. And one time he hit a walk-off home run and he dragged the kid with him because there was a kid tugging on his jersey who would storm the field as he circled the bases. If you go through and you read 1920s and 1930s sports writing, you'll find all sorts of really weird kind of things. Quotes from Lou Gehrig, who sounded very corny always. I'm as happy as a kid with a new red wagon after he hit 4 home runs in a game. But one of my favorite ones is the Yankees had a pitcher who pitched a shutout in his first start and a shutout in his second start. And that happened at the turn of the century, 1900s, dead ball, different game. But still fun because the pitcher was known as Slow Joe Doyle. And Slow Joe Doyle he was an interesting person. His approach on the mound was, some might say, Traxelian, for those who remember Steve Traxel and how slow he pitched.
Okay.
Now
He's a Long
I
Beach
guess
State guy. Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
he could irritate people with the amount of time that he took in between pitches. Nowadays, I think that would be more like Pedro Baez on the Dodgers.
I was just thinking that.
Problematic.
I like to call him a human rain delay.
Yes, exactly. Slow Joe Doyle was not slow like mentally.
Yeah.
He was just a human rain delay on the mound.
Yeah.
And he lulled batters to sleep with the speed at which he worked. There was a anecdote. So if you go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, there's the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then there's the library, which you can make an appointment to visit, and you can check out all the stuff that's in their library. And they have a file on every player that ever played Major League Baseball. And those files are often filled with newspaper articles, but also families are aware of this, and they donate things like scrapbooks. So, and it had to have come from his family. There was a Xerox of every page of a scrapbook for Slow Joe Doyle that was like 100 pages. And it's all these articles from the minor leagues, and like it had his whole career in it, start to finish. And there was a story from the minor leagues where he was pitching in a game. His team had a long rally, and he was due up. He was the ninth man up or whatever. And they went to try and they looked up, the bench. He wasn't there. And they were like, "Where's Slow Joe Doyle?" And it turned out that he walked a little ways down. He had set up a hammock and fallen asleep. Yep. That's baseball in the early part of the 20th century, late part of the 19th century for you.
That's pretty crazy. I did read the Jeter section, and I just wanted to ask you in general about your thoughts on him. A lot of people think some people think he's overrated, or he had a lot of, dinky hits or whatever, took advantage of Yankee Stadium. Obviously, he's got some crazy numbers. Doesn't have the defensive numbers that other guys do, but offensively, I mean, the story went, I think David Price gave up his 3,000th hit. He wasn't doing that well before that, and then it propelled him to, have another great season. What are your thoughts on Jeter as a whole?
All right, that's a multi-part answer. Do I think that playing in Yankee Stadium helped him? Yeah, probably a little bit. I'm about to actually look and just investigate that slightly, but I think he was still a pretty good player regardless. I think the stories of leadership and things of that sort, and being all business, and the good upbringing, I think those are all legit. The great play that he made against the A's, is great awareness of the situation and the moment, and not and realizing that something was there for him to get, and if he could make this miracle play, it could happen. That was a great moment of awareness. The play against the Red Sox on that foul ball down the left field line was a very good play. He did crash into the stands.
Yes.
I worry about players that would just do that, but good for him that he did it. He was a very solid clutch hitter. He was someone that you wanted up in the ninth inning of a game because the moment would not get too big for him.
Yes.
Defensively, the issue that the defensive metrics have with him is that he did not do well on balls hit to his left. And as much as you saw the jump throw, and the jump throw is kind of legendary, you didn't see the many times that he didn't reach that ball or didn't necessarily put enough zip. You only saw it when it worked. And I think there were enough times. There was a study done comparing him to Adam Everett, and they were like this. They just essentially put their plays side by side and walked you through how they did it, and there was no comparison. So defensively, I don't know that he was necessarily as bad as the numbers make him out to be, but I don't have a problem with him being a first ballot Hall of Famer or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting test to see how he develops a baseball team in Miami where nobody goes to the games.
It's not a baseball town, that's for sure. No. As far as for this year, just in general, because you're a baseball fan, what are your thoughts on who do you think we're going to see at the end? Probably.
So I thought I picked the Dodger-Yankee World Series, which is really kind of like picking chalk, I guess, for the most part. before the season started. So I'm probably going to stick with it. I think the most like a fun or entertaining kind of thing would be, well, Giants, almost anyone is an interesting one because the Giants had no business being at 80 wins. And they've been amazing all season. And it's certainly a testament to the completeness of the team that they've put together from, general manager and president all the way through. They've put together a heck of a team. But like, give me an unlikely and give me a team that hasn't won in forever. Like the A's is a good one. Dusty Baker with Houston would certainly be a really cool one. The White Sox with La Russa, even if you don't like Tony La Russa, I think it's interesting. 70-something-year-old guy comes out of the mothballs to manage.
And they thought he was going to lose that team early on, right? Too old, too out of touch.
Yeah. That team's too good. Like he would. I felt like there wasn't then that the team's too good. The division's too bad. I didn't expect the Twins to be this bad, but it would have been really difficult for him to mess that up. I think it'd be great to see the Rays win. There are a lot of good options this year. Certainly,
yeah.
Brewers winning a World Series would be interesting. Were you going to ask thoughts on the season or?
Yeah, anything. I was just thinking who. Yeah, go ahead.
So I am concerned about the direction of the sport and the direction that the game is heading into going into this collective bargaining agreement. Average time of 9-inning game is now 309. And I find that if it goes over that, I tend to get lost a little bit and I tend to zone out.
It's hard to watch a regular season baseball game.
Yep. And it gets hard to watch a playoff game that goes 4 hours too.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
If they could get it to 245, like that would be tremendous. But I think the genie's out of the bottle on that. I don't know that they're necessarily going to be able to do that. Baseball definitely has some watchability issues. There are a lot of really good things there. You just need to figure out a way to make the good things more visible and the bad things less visible. And hopefully they do that. I'm a little worried, but I'm hopeful that they'll figure out a way to do that. And no, eliminating the shift does not fix everything, by the way.
I don't want them to lower the mound. I don't want them to do anything weird like that. Now, a lot of people are saying they don't like the runner on second base in extra innings. It's kind of like a free double to start a leadoff hit. But you're right. The time of game, people aren't going to stick around. It's hard.
I would like the leadoff man on second base thing implemented if games weren't so long, play a 10th inning. And then kind of like hockey, play one period of overtime, and then you can gimmick it up a little.
Okay.
But give us a shot in the 10th inning to have a normal resolution to this baseball game.
What about shortening the game to 7 innings or shortening the season to like 120 games, maybe?
Oh, I don't think anyone's going to want less revenue. So 120 games.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, the baseball season probably is like, you do want, as a baseball person, you want more baseball, but there is such a thing as too much sometimes. I think if you shorten this baseball season within 10%, I think that wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Games to 7 innings. So again, double headers. Give me one normal game. Give me like a 9-inning game and then give me a 7.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say this: it's 7 innings definitely speeds it up. 7 innings solves the problem.
2 hours, we're out of there.
Yes, it changes the game in a lot of other ways that make it that are unfortunate and doesn't like baseball is meant to be a little bit of a test of endurance, and 7 innings eliminates that to an extent.
Right. Okay, so last thing, give you a chance to plug all your stuff. Where can everybody follow you, find your podcast, all that stuff, your social media, everything?
All right, so the company I work for is Sports Info Solutions. SportsInfo_SIS on Twitter. SportsInfoSolutionsblog.com takes you to the articles like the one about the San Francisco Giants that we talked about earlier. Apple Podcasts, Sports Info Solutions Baseball Podcast, and the Journalism Salute. You can find us there. I'm on Twitter at Mark A. Simon Says. That's the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It was great. One of the more fun episodes I've done. It was great to dive in. Someone that knows their stuff.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a lot
try.
of fun.
Cool.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you, guys. Hope you really enjoyed that interview. Lots of great insight for a guy that used to work in the ESPN biz for a long time, and now he's more on his own doing all kinds of stats for Sports Info Solutions. A lot of really cool details about the game that makes baseball a little bit more interesting, the fun stats that other sports don't really have. So hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Please go follow him on Twitter at Mark A. Simon Says. He's got all your info. All of his podcast info is on there as well. Sports Info Solutions. You can follow the blog where they write articles about cool defensive appreciation days. So hope you guys enjoyed it with him. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. I'm doing a lot more content there. So check me out there. I'm doing a lot more interactive videos. You guys can interact, comment, and send me a DM and tell me I'm wrong, which I'm usually not. But hey, sometimes I get it wrong. But follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Follow our YouTube channel. Please subscribe when you get over there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast, hit subscribe. You can find us there. All the videos of the interviews are there, and I'm posting some other content as well there. So head on over to Too Tall Sports Podcast YouTube, subscribe, share it, like it, comment, whatever you want to do. Love it. Spend some time there. Check out all the videos. We've got over a year's worth of content on there. So check it out. On the audio side, if you're an Apple Podcast person, stop for 2 seconds, scroll down to the main page where you see the episodes. If you scroll past that, you'll see the 5 stars. Please hit the 5-star if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow. And if you want to leave a review, that's also great. We love those, especially on the bottom underneath the stars. You can leave a nice review about the show if you like the show, which I hope you do if you're still listening at this point of the episode. We really appreciate it. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Play, we're on Amazon Music, we're on Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts, we're probably there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. As always, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week for another great episode. Peace.